This video was a request by the admin over at a site called militia.com. For those of you that are worried about the current events in this country and are considering joining a militia, or you're just interested in prepping and survivalism, come over to militia.com. Become a member. If you're looking for a militia, you just might find one there that you fit in with, that has common beliefs as you. If you go there to become a member, remember to use a VPN because you do not know who may be monitoring who shows up to that site. Now, they requested that I discuss the situation of what's happening in Virginia and why it is important. For those of you that are not aware, and you would be part of the minority of this country, a very small minority, anti-gun politicians have succeeded in taking over what a year ago was a firmly pro-Constitution, pro-firearms state. And on January 8th, these politicians take their oath of office. And very hypocritically, they will take an oath to support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the state of Virginia. A state that on its very flag has the phrase, sic semper tyrannis. These politicians have already stated that they will immediately start pushing through their anti-gun agenda. For those of you that are not aware of the types of laws that they are considering putting through a red flag law. A red flag law allows law enforcement to come in and disarm you and your family under just an allegation. The person making the allegation to law enforcement is not required to show any proof. When law enforcement serves this red flag warrant, they do not need to identify themselves as they kick in your door. The results of these types of raids across this country have already resulted in deaths. It is clearly an unconstitutional law. They're also discussing changing existing law from the Reconstruction period post-Civil War of the 1860s. Changing the law that if 2 or more people get together to train for defense or any type of militia or military type activity, that this constitutes a paramilitary force and is illegal. The wording that they're considering is so vague that your children's karate classes constitutes paramilitary activity. That Civil War reenactment event done on Civil War battlefields to teach people about what happened constitutes paramilitary activity. If you and your friend decide to go to the range to zero the scopes on your rifle for the next deer season, that constitutes paramilitary activity. And some of the most egregious laws that they're considering involve these: the firearms themselves. They're discussing banning what they consider assault weapons. And the wording is so vague that even that single shot bolt action .22 that your great-grandfather used as a kid during the Depression to put squirrels and rabbits on the table for his family to eat, that can be classified as an assault weapon. but we get told that they only mean these. This is a semi-automatic only Bushmaster copy of the U.S. military's M4 carbine. It is not the same as the U.S. military's M4 carbine, and it is not an assault weapon. This is just a semi-automatic rifle. An actual M4 is capable of semi-automatic and 3-round burst automatic fire. This is not. This can only fire a single round with each pull of the trigger. They are also discussing banning these standard capacity magazines for this firearm and others. Any magazine that holds more than 10 rounds or could potentially hold more than 10 rounds will be considered illegal. Their excuses that they always tell us is it's because of mass shootings that this is the preferred firearm of mass shooters. But when you actually look at statistics put out even by the FBI, the most common firearm used in mass shootings and in violent crimes is a handgun. And that's what they pushed in the 1990s that they kept trying to ban. But people stood in their way. Groups such as the National Rifle Association, which is based in Virginia. They've now shown their true colors, and they are going after these. But why are they going after these? And I'll get into that. The anti-gun politicians have stated that they will compromise with these citizens of Virginia. They will let the serfs help determine this new legislation. They will let you keep your firearms like these if you register them. Registration always ends in genocide. If you do not believe me, ask the citizens of Nazi Germany. Ask the citizens of the Soviet Union after the communists took over in the 1920s. Ask the citizens of China after the communists took over in 1949. Oh, I'm sorry, you can't. Because after their firearms were registered, their government came in and confiscated them. Then they came in and rounded those citizens up and sent them to camps and extermination centers. And as those citizens were being hauled away, they were wishing they hadn't turned these in. Here in the United States, our country came to be because of a single event. On April 19th, 1775, in the colony of Massachusetts, the British government decided their citizens did not have a right to own firearms because they considered them unruly. So a force of 700 men, led by Lieutenant Colonel Francis Smith, marched to confiscate an armory in the city of Concord, Massachusetts. Along the way, they met a group of militia in a little place called Lexington. And on Lexington Green, as the sun was coming up that morning, this group of citizens stood their ground against these tyrants. A shot was fired that we do not know who fired the first shot, but the results were 8 militia were killed. The remaining members ran off because they were vastly outnumbered. The British troops then looted Lexington, Massachusetts, and continued their march on to Concord. At Concord Bridge, they met a larger contingent of militia. And at that point, it was the British that began running all the way back to Boston, harried the entire way by citizens with their firearms. Firearms that evolved to this. A very bloody and horrible war then followed. But the results of that war was a new nation. 13 colonies became 13 states of the United States of America. And they considered, for a very lengthy period of time, documents to run this new nation, to tell the government what they were allowed to do, not allowed to do. That resulted in the United States Constitution. This Constitution was taken by the delegates back to their states, where it was looked over by the representatives of the people in each state. And they said, good job, but you're missing something. We want a Bill of Rights stating, recognizing what the God-given rights of the citizens are. And it tells government what they are not allowed to do. The Second Amendment of this Bill of Rights of the United States Constitution states, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. This legislation that is being considered in Virginia is clearly unconstitutional. And as soon as it passes, and do not fool yourselves, it will pass, it will be challenged in court. On January 20th of this year, the Virginia Citizens Defense League, their website is vcdl.org, I will put a link in the description, is holding their yearly lobby day. It will be in Richmond, Virginia, at their Capitol building. I highly encourage every patriot across this nation to try to be there. We need as many patriots as possible at this event. Because this doesn't just affect Virginia. This affects the entire nation. Virginia was the most pro-gun state in this nation 1 year ago. And now we're at a point where they are discussing making these illegal overnight. So you go from being a citizen, owning a lawful firearm, to becoming a felony with a single stroke of a pen. If this can pass in Virginia, it will pass in more states. I have heard it said that at least 12 other states currently are considering legislation similar to what Virginia is putting through. All of it. The gun bans, the gun confiscations, the red flag laws, banning militia activity, any type of defense activity. All of this legislation is clearly unconstitutional. This is not just a Virginia thing. This is something that affects all of us. Everyone should try to go to Virginia to show the anti-gunners, to show the leftists in our government and across this nation that we outnumber them, that we are stronger than them, and that we are willing to stand up for what the Founding Fathers gave us. That we are willing to say that those people that lost their lives in the War of Independence did not lose their lives in vain. That we are willing to do whatever is required, to pay whatever price is required of us to continue this republic, so that we can pass it and the freedoms that our Constitution and Bill of Rights recognize, that we can pass those on to our progeny, our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, and their great-grandchildren. This country is a beacon of freedom around the world, and we must not allow that beacon to go out. Go to Virginia. Stand the line against this coming tyranny. Show them a show of force, but of peaceful force, that we're not going to back down, that we are not going to allow them to turn us into serfs and slaves. January 20th, Richmond, Virginia. Everyone needs to be there. God willing, this does not turn into our version of April 19th, 1775. This time, instead of a handful of patriots standing against a much larger force, let's show them what a multitude of tens of thousands of patriots looks like. Tens of thousands of patriots from across this entire nation, telling members of political parties that we are not willing to be serfs. We are not willing to be slaves. That we are free citizens of this nation, and that were given God-given rights to defend ourselves with whatever means we so choose. May God bless the Republic, and may He stand with us on April 20th.